The stage is where legends are born. Under those blazing lights, ordinary people transform into icons, channeling raw emotion through music, comedy, or drama. For most, performing is triumph, a connection with the audience that feels like pure magic. But for some, those same spotlights became their final moments. Tonight, we uncover 20 artists and actors whose last breath came not in silence, but in front of an audience. These stories will forever change how you watch live performance. Johnny Ace. Christmas Day, 1954. Rising R&B star Johnny Ace was at the peak of his career, riding high with Pledging My Love topping the charts. At just 25, he had captivated fans with his smooth voice and effortless charisma. That night in Houston, after performing to a packed auditorium, he retreated backstage. Surrounded by bandmates, Johnny indulged in a dangerous habit, playing with his pistol after drinking. He jokingly spun the chamber, insisting, "It's not loaded." Seconds later, he pulled the trigger. The room erupted in horror as the bullet struck him instantly. His girlfriend, Olivia Gibbs, discovered his lifeless body minutes later, while the crowd outside still cheered for an encore. Johnny Ace's final gamble cost him everything. Instead of returning to the stage, he became one of music's earliest cautionary tales of fame, recklessness, and the thin line between glory and tragedy. Dimebag Darrell Abbott. December 8, 2004. Columbus, Ohio. Dimebag Darrell Abbott, legendary guitarist of Pantera, was performing with his new band, Damage Plan, in the intimate Alrosa Villa nightclub. For Darrell, these smaller venues rekindled the raw joy of performing. But that night turned into one of rock's darkest tragedies. Only 3 songs into the set, a disturbed fan named Nathan Gale stormed the stage with a handgun. Before anyone could react, Gale opened fire, striking Darrell multiple times. The guitarist collapsed instantly, his beloved axe still strapped to his body. Chaos erupted as fans screamed and band members dove for cover. Gale killed 3 more before being stopped by police. The motive? A delusion that Darrell was responsible for Pantera's breakup. That night, heavy metal lost one of its most electrifying innovators. Dimebag Darrell's ferocious riffs and thunderous stage presence had inspired a generation of musicians, but in a cruel twist, it was his passion for live performance that left him vulnerable to a fan's violent obsession. Les Harvey. May 3, 1972. Swansea University, Wales. Scottish blues rock band Stone the Crows were on the rise, with guitarist Les Harvey delivering soulful riffs alongside powerhouse vocalist Maggie Bell. The band had built momentum across the UK, and this show was another stop on their ascent. But tragedy struck mid-performance. Harvey reached for his microphone with wet hands. A faulty electrical grounding sent 240 volts surging through his body. In seconds, he was dead. Electrocuted in front of the crowd. The audience sat in stunned silence as feedback wailed from his guitar. Maggie Bell, his partner on and off stage, was left devastated. Stone the Crows tried to continue with new members, but the magic was gone. Harvey's death wasn't just a personal loss. It exposed the lethal lack of safety standards in live venues during the era. His final note wasn't a chord, but a horrifying reminder of how unprotected performers once were, and how fragile the stage could be. Tiny Tim. November 30th, 1996. Minneapolis, Minnesota. The eccentric ukulele-playing entertainer Tiny Tim, famous for his falsetto rendition of Tiptoe Through the Tulips, was still performing at age 64, despite chronic heart problems. That night, at a small benefit concert, he launched into his signature tune. Fans cheered as his oddball charm filled the hall. But midway through the performance, Tiny Tim suddenly clutched his chest and crumpled to the floor. At first, the audience thought it was part of his act. He was notorious for antics that blurred comedy and sincerity. The laughter quickly turned into horror as paramedics rushed forward. He never regained consciousness. On his way to the hospital, Tiny Tim suffered a fatal heart attack. For decades, he had been dismissed as a novelty act, but his final moment carried tragic poetry. A man dying mid-song, giving his life to the performance that defined him. In death, as in life, Tiny Tim remained unforgettable. Irma Bule, April 4, 2016. Karawang, Indonesia. Irma Bule, a 29-year-old dangdut singer, had become known for incorporating live snakes into her performances. For fans, it was thrilling, a mix of traditional folk and danger. That night, she danced with a king cobra draped across her shoulders. Midway through her set, the snake struck, sinking its fangs into her thigh. Gasps rippled through the crowd. But Irma, determined not to disappoint her audience, kept singing for another 45 minutes, refusing medical treatment. The venom coursed silently through her body as she smiled and entertained. Only after the show did she collapse backstage, convulsing violently. By the time doctors intervened, it was too late. The poison had claimed her life. Her death shocked Indonesia and the world. Irma's dedication, while heroic, became fatal. She literally gave her life for her art, turning a daring stage act into a haunting final performance no one present would ever forget. Mika Ben, October 15, 2022. Paris, France. Michael Benjamin, better known as Mika Ben, was the shining star of Haitian music. Beloved for his smooth vocals and magnetic presence, the 41-year-old was headlining a celebration of Caribbean culture at the Accor Arena. Thousands filled the venue, waving flags and chanting along to his hits. But in the middle of a high-energy performance, Mika Ben suddenly grabbed his chest and fell backward on stage. At first, many thought he had fainted from exhaustion. But when security and medics swarmed, the truth became painfully clear. He had suffered a massive heart attack. The show was halted immediately as the stunned audience looked on in disbelief. Despite being rushed to the hospital, Mika Ben was pronounced dead within the hour. The Haitian diaspora reeled from the loss. He wasn't just a singer, he was a cultural ambassador bringing Haiti's music to the world stage. His final performance, meant to unite and uplift, instead became a heartbreaking farewell. Mika Ben left behind his wife, 3 young children, and a global fan base who will forever remember his last song, not as entertainment, but as the tragic final note of a life cut short. Tommy Cooper, April 15, 1984. London's Her Majesty's Theatre. Beloved British comedian-magician Tommy Cooper was performing during a live television broadcast watched by millions. Known for his bumbling persona and perfect comedic timing, Cooper was in the middle of a magic routine when he suddenly slumped behind his table. The audience erupted in laughter, convinced it was just another of his famous pratfalls. Even the cameras kept rolling, showing a man dying in real time as the crowd howled at what they thought was part of the show. But minutes passed. He didn't get up. Slowly, a chilling realization crept across the theater. This wasn't comedy. It was tragedy unfolding live. The broadcast abruptly cut to commercials as paramedics rushed on stage, but nothing could be done. Cooper had suffered a massive heart attack, leaving Britain mourning one of its most beloved entertainers. The eerie blending of comedy and death left a lasting mark on live television, forcing producers to rethink how to handle on-air medical emergencies. Cooper's last act was both surreal and haunting, a man who lived for laughter, collapsing mid-joke, never to rise again. Nick Menza. May 21, 2016. Studio City, California. Nick Menza, former drummer of thrash metal giants Megadeth, had returned to the stage with his jazz fusion band at the Baked Potato, a small but iconic club. Fans packed the intimate venue to see the 51-year-old powerhouse back in action after years of health struggles. 3 songs into the set, Menza launched into a complex solo, his sticks flying across the kit. Then, suddenly, he slumped forward, collapsing over his drums. At first, bandmates thought it was a dramatic flourish, part of the show. But when he didn't move, panic spread. Paramedics rushed in and tried desperately to revive him, but it was too late. Menza had suffered a fatal heart attack. Only months earlier, he had undergone heart surgery, ignoring medical advice in his determination to perform again. For fans, it was devastating. The man whose precision defined Megadeth's golden era had fallen silent mid-performance. His final moment came not in a hospital bed, but behind the drums, exactly where he had always wanted to be. It was both fitting and heartbreaking. The ultimate musician who gave his life to the rhythm. Prince. April 14, 2016. The Fox Theater in Atlanta. Prince, the Purple One himself, was in the middle of his stripped-down piano and a microphone tour. Gone were the elaborate sets and costumes. This was Prince raw, vulnerable, and intimate. Fans were electrified to see their idol in such a pure form. But beneath the brilliance, something was wrong. He looked frail, pausing mid-song, struggling to catch his breath. Whispers grew about his weight loss and exhaustion, but Prince refused to cancel, driven by perfectionism and pride. That show would be his final performance. Just a week later, he was found dead at his Paisley Park estate from an accidental fentanyl overdose. Those last concerts took on haunting significance. Audiences thought they were witnessing artistic reinvention, but they were watching a man fight through unbearable pain. Prince gave everything to his fans until the very end, hiding his struggles under the glow of the spotlight. His last note in Atlanta wasn't just music, it was a farewell disguised as performance, leaving the world stunned when the curtain finally fell for good. Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper. February 3, 1959. Clear Lake, Iowa. The Winter Dance Party tour was grueling. Buses broke down, the weather was bitter cold, and 3 young stars were exhausted but determined to keep performing. That night, Buddy Holly, just 22, Richie Valens, only 17, and JP the Big Bopper Richardson, 28, lit up the surf ballroom with electrifying sets. But afterward, Holly decided he'd had enough of broken heaters and chartered a small plane to the next venue. Moments after takeoff, the aircraft crashed in a snowy field. All 3 were killed instantly. Don McLean would later call it the day the music died in his immortal song American Pie. For fans, it felt like rock and roll itself had been cut down in its youth. Holly's songwriting genius, Valens' groundbreaking Latino influence, and the Big Bopper's flamboyant showmanship all vanished overnight. The tragedy wasn't just the loss of 3 musicians, but of decades of music they never had the chance to create. That night's performance became their last and their legend. Choi Jin-sil. South Korea, 2008. Choi Jin-sil was one of the nation's most beloved actresses, a star whose career spanned film, television, and theater. That year, she returned to the stage for a live performance. Eager to show her depth as a dramatic actress, audiences packed the theater, hanging on her every word. But midway through the play, Choi suddenly staggered, clutching her chest before collapsing on stage. At first, the audience thought it was part of the act, an emotional scene played with devastating realism. But when fellow actors broke character, panic spread. Paramedics rushed in as the curtain fell, and Choi was whisked away to a hospital. The nation was stunned when news confirmed she had passed from sudden cardiac arrest. She was only 39. Known as the nation's actress, Choi's death left South Korea in mourning. Her final performance, once meant to showcase her artistry, became her heartbreaking farewell. Audiences who witnessed it never forgot the shock of seeing their idol fall before their eyes, a stark reminder of how fragile even the brightest stars can be. Joseph Green. New York, 1919. Joseph Green was a seasoned stage actor, respected for his Shakespearean performances. That night, he was playing in Othello, delivering one of the bard's most emotional roles. The audience watched as he threw himself into the scene with intensity. But then, mid-monologue, he faltered. His voice cracked, his body trembled, and within moments he collapsed onto the stage floor. The stunned audience applauded, thinking it was brilliant acting. But when the curtain fell and he didn't rise, the truth emerged. Joseph Green had died of a massive heart attack in front of the crowd. For actors of his generation, the stage was more than a profession. It was life itself. Green's death became one of Broadway's earliest public tragedies, a haunting tale whispered among theater folk for decades. His passing showed the eerie closeness between drama and reality, an actor who lived and died in Shakespeare's world, leaving his audience with a performance that blurred fiction and finality in the most devastating way possible. Molière. Paris, February 17, 1673. Legendary playwright and actor Molière was performing in his own play, The Imaginary Invalid, a satirical comedy about a hypochondriac obsessed with his health. In a cruel twist of fate, life imitated art that night. Dressed in yellow, portraying a man terrified of dying, Molière began to cough violently during the performance. Blood trickled from his mouth as the audience roared with laughter, assuming it was exaggerated comedy. He pressed on, finishing his lines despite the growing pain. Minutes later, he collapsed in front of the stunned cast. Carried home, Molière died within hours from a pulmonary hemorrhage. He was 51. To this day, his death is one of theater's most infamous ironies. The man mocking illness on stage was consumed by it in real life. The Catholic Church even resisted burying him, seeing his profession as sinful. Yet centuries later, his name remains immortal, forever tied to the haunting image of an artist who literally performed until his dying breath. Richard Versailles. January 5, 1996. The Metropolitan Opera, New York. The house was packed, and the stage was alive with Janacek's The Makropoulos Case. Richard Versailles, a 63-year-old tenor, climbed a ladder for his role as Vitek, delivering the line, "You can only live so long." As the chilling words left his mouth, he suddenly lost his balance. In horrifying synchronicity, Versailles fell from the set's high platform, crashing to the stage below. Gasps erupted as the orchestra faltered and the performance halted. The haunting irony was undeniable. A man, singing about the limits of life meeting his own in front of thousands. Though rushed to medical aid, Versailles was pronounced dead at the scene from the injuries sustained. Opera houses are known for grandeur and spectacle, but no one in attendance that night would ever forget the grim reality that overshadowed the art. Versailles' tragic fall etched itself into operatic history, a devastating reminder of how fragile life is, even in the world's grandest theaters. Leonard Warren. March 4, 1960. The Metropolitan Opera in New York was in the midst of Verdi's La Forza del Destino. On stage was baritone Leonard Warren, one of opera's greatest voices. His booming presence filled the hall as he sang with unmatched power. Midway through Act 3, he launched into the aria Urna fatale del mio destino, the fatal urn of my destiny. As the final words left his mouth, Warren suddenly staggered. He clutched his chest and fell, collapsing in front of a hushed audience. The performance ground to a halt as medics rushed to his side. Moments later, it was announced he had died of a massive cerebral hemorrhage. He was only 48. Warren's death stunned the opera world. Critics had long considered him the finest Verdi baritone of his generation. To die mid-performance, while voicing lines about fate itself, was a tragic irony that haunted audiences. His final aria became both prophecy and epitaph, sealing his legacy in operatic history forever. J.I. Rodale. June 1971. J.I. Rodale, publisher and health enthusiast, was a guest on The Dick Cavett Show. Known as the father of organic farming in America, Rodale was passionate about wellness and longevity. During the taping, he was lively and animated, even joking about how he planned to live to 100. But fate had other plans. While seated on the couch next to fellow guest, he suddenly slumped over, unresponsive. At first, some in the audience thought it was a bit of dark humor. But the truth hit quickly. Rodale had died of a massive heart attack on live television. Cavett and the crew were shaken to their core. The episode never aired. Rodale's sudden passing shocked the public, turning what was supposed to be a light-hearted conversation into one of TV's darkest moments. The man who preached vitality and long life was silenced mid-sentence, his death becoming one of the most infamous tragedies in talk show history. Owen Hart. May 23, 1999. Kansas City, Missouri. Professional wrestler Owen Hart, beloved for his charisma and athleticism, was scheduled for a dramatic entrance during WWE's Over the Edge pay-per-view. The stunt involved being lowered from the rafters on a harness, portraying his comedic Blue Blazer character. But as the cameras rolled and thousands watched live, disaster struck. Hart's harness malfunctioned, and he plummeted 78 feet into the ring. The impact was fatal. Fans in the arena screamed in horror as announcers scrambled to explain the unfolding tragedy. Many viewers at home initially thought it was scripted. Wrestling was notorious for theatrics, but it was brutally real. Hart was rushed to the hospital but pronounced dead within minutes. Only 34 years old, he left behind a young family and a grieving fan base. His death became a turning point in wrestling history, forcing companies to reevaluate the risks of live stunts. Owen Hart's final moment was not just a performance gone wrong, it was a heartbreaking reminder of the real dangers hidden behind the spectacle. Yevgeny Kulik. St. Petersburg, 1917. Yevgeny Kulik, a dancer with the Imperial Russian Ballet, was performing a demanding routine during a production at the Mariinsky Theater. The audience admired his fluid movements and commanding stage presence as the orchestra swelled. But in the middle of a leap, Kulik faltered. He collapsed on stage, clutching his chest. Fellow dancers rushed to his side as the curtain fell abruptly. The cause was a sudden heart attack, one that claimed his life before doctors could intervene. He was only in his early 30s, celebrated as a rising star of Russian ballet. For audiences, the experience was surreal. They had witnessed not just artistry, but the artist's final breath. In the years that followed, his story became one of ballet's whispered legends, a cautionary tale of the physical toll demanded by perfection. Kulik's tragic end underscored the immense pressure performers endure, sacrificing body and spirit for fleeting moments of beauty on stage. His death added a haunting footnote to an already turbulent year in Russian history. Dick Shawn. April 17, 1987. San Diego, California. Dick Shawn, the eccentric comedian and actor best known for his role in The Producers, was performing a one-man show before a packed audience. Ever unpredictable, Shawn thrived on shocking his fans. That evening, he launched into a routine satirizing politics, pretending to be a candidate delivering an over-the-top speech. Suddenly, he dropped to the floor, lying motionless. The crowd erupted in laughter, convinced it was part of the act. But as the silence stretched, unease set in. Stagehands rushed forward and realized the horrifying truth. Shawn had suffered a massive heart attack mid-performance. He was gone within minutes. For those in the audience, the experience was chilling. They had laughed at death itself, mistaking reality for comedy. Shawn's passing became one of the most unsettling moments in stand-up history. His legacy as a fearless performer was sealed by the ultimate irony. His final joke was no act at all. but the real curtain call of his life. Brandon Lee. March 31st, 1993, Wilmington, North Carolina. Brandon Lee, son of martial arts legend Bruce Lee, was filming a pivotal scene in The Crow, a dark action film destined to become a cult classic. The script called for his character to be shot, but due to a prop malfunction, a real bullet fragment was lodged in the chamber of a revolver. When the scene was executed, Brandon was struck in the abdomen. Cast and crew were horrified, initially believing it was part of the performance. Chaos erupted as medics scrambled, but Lee succumbed to his injuries after hours of surgery. He was only 28. The tragedy mirrored his father's untimely death 2 decades earlier, fueling conspiracy theories that the family was cursed. Yet the reality was simpler and sadder. Negligence and bad luck on set cost a promising actor his life. When The Crow was released, Brandon's performance was hailed as haunting and unforgettable, forever tied to the knowledge that audiences were watching a man's final role unfold. These tragedies remind us that live performance is both magical and fragile. Each artist and actor died doing what they loved most, whether singing, joking, acting, or fighting under the spotlight. Their final moments were captured not in silence, but in front of an audience, blurring the line between art and mortality. Which of these stories left you most shaken? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold histories of the stage.